And this is why you always want to keep one in the chamber. Now, I would even go as far as to say you should always just have a firearm on you for personal protection, whether it is to protect yourself or your loved ones. If you have the legal means to carry a firearm and you're comfortable carrying a firearm, you should absolutely do so. Make sure you train with it. And again, always make sure that you keep one in the chamber. Now, when we do these fight breakdowns, I remind you, I try my best not to quarterback the situation because let's be honest, I'm not there. I'm not in this situation. I'm not in their shoes. I'm not dealing with the stress of this type of attack. However, I do want to point out a few key components of this video that I think we could learn from and then apply it to our training so that if we do find ourselves in situations, we can handle them even better than how she did. Now, again, she handles the situation just fine. She gets out of the situation alive. And again, at the end of the day, if it works, right? But number one, she's clueless. I'm sorry, I'm gonna be blunt about it. She's clueless. We talk about situational awareness all the time. She wasn't distracted by anything. She wasn't on her phone. But it wasn't until this guy was within arm's reach of her that she finally realized, like, oh shit, this guy's coming after me. Not only does he speed past her over speed bump, but he pumps the brakes, gets out of the car, and beelines it towards her. And again, until he's within arm's reach, he doesn't really recognize or come to the realization of oh, this guy's coming right towards me, right? If I was in her situation and somebody just sped right past me and slammed the brakes, mind you, the car is going to make a noise. I'm going to at least pay attention to it. And if something feels off about that specific circumstance, I'm just going to backtrack right where I came from. Apartment, hotel, restaurant, whatever. I'm going to go right back where I came from. Now, if I was walking across the street and I saw the same situation and then I see a guy get out of the car and start approaching me, I'm going to backpedal, not walk backwards. I'm going to backpedal, meaning I'm going to start creating some distance. I'm going to use that as an opportunity to scan the area and just analyze everything that's going on around me. What exactly is this person doing? Are there other people that I notice that could potentially be working with him? Does he have a weapon in his hand? As I start analyzing that information, I can then start making decisions on my own. Do I need to just turn and run out of there? Do I need to get hands on my firearm or whatever it is that I'm carrying? I can make a logical decision based off of the information that I've gathered. So again, I remind you all, when you're out in public, pay attention to who's around you, what's around you, and if something feels off, act accordingly. The big thing, and we're actually going to go out on the mat and talk about this here shortly, is her drawing of her firearm from that 0 to 5 foot range. She goes 2 hands on. Now, when you have someone that is that close to you, and I mean within arm's reach, I need to have my primary or my lead hand involved in some way, shape, or form on the aggressor, whether I'm acting as like a battering ram, whether I'm hitting them, whether I'm posting up on their garments or just on their body. I need to do something to either put some pain on the person or keep them at bay long enough that my secondary hand can clear my garments and get hands onto my firearm. She decides to go 2 hands on one. Fortunately, she makes it work out, but he very easily could have gotten hands on. He could have hit her. He could have just rushed her. And that situation could have gone from bad to worse, especially if he actually got a hold of the firearm, because now essentially she's handing him a weapon to use against her in a fight that necessarily didn't even have a weapon involved to begin with. So when you are drawing from that 0 to 5 foot range, the last thing we want to do is go 2 on 1. I can do that if I'm like 10 plus feet away. I have the time to do so. I can clear the garments, but I have to be comfortable. And if you're not comfortable clearing your garments with one hand, you need to train it. I understand it's a little bit more difficult when it's not just one shirt, when you've got hoodies and jackets and multiple layers, but believe it or not, you have to be able to train it. And I also have to be comfortable having one hand doing something else while my other hand is clearing and getting my hands on the firearm. Again, we're going to cover that on the mat, so I can go over what is called the Thumb Pectoral Index method. It's one that I've picked up with the ShivWorks guys, but I like it. I love the way that it's utilized and just the concepts behind it and the context behind it, but we'll cover that here shortly. The last thing I want to point out is her movements. Now, she starts walking backwards, which is a normal human reaction. The problem is she doesn't stop moving backwards. And in any type of fight, whether it's sport or street, you never want to find yourself moving backwards, especially for that long of a time. Like 1 or 2 steps, I get it, but then I need to immediately work off to the side or work off to an angle to, again, scan the area, but it also gives me an opportunity to land a few strikes. It buys me some time to draw a weapon. Maybe I can enter the clinch if I need to. But what it also does is forces the aggressor or the attacker to have to essentially locate you. They have to constantly square up and figure out where you are rather than just walking straight at you. The other thing is, if I'm walking backwards, I don't move as fast. I can't see what's behind me, and I have a higher risk of tripping or falling over something, which again would then put me on the ground, and now we're in a completely different type of situation, which again, if it includes weapons, that's extremely dangerous place to be. All of that said though, again, I think the biggest thing to take away from this is the importance of understanding how to draw your firearms from concealment in a 0 to 5 foot range. So let's head out to the mats and show you. So we're gonna demo this. I'm on boy blue here, right?
But the 0 to 5 foot range, in my opinion, is the most dangerous area to be when drawing a firearm, and it's a lot closer than what people realize, right? You hear 0 to 5 feet, but until you're in that moment, you just don't comprehend how close that truly is. You don't have a lot of time to react. You don't have a lot of time to make mistakes. So I have to make sure that this is near perfect and that I am as calm as possible and that I'm still going through the proper motions. Now, this is the Thumb Pectoral Index method. It is one that I picked up training with the guys over at ShivWorks. Again, highly recommend that course if you've taken it. But there's a couple things that we need to understand. First and foremost, my lead hand is going to be doing something. It has to. I'm in the close range, meaning that I'm in range where I can touch them. They're going to be in range that they can touch me. So I have to address them with my opposite hand, which means I don't have the privilege of using both hands to clear the garment, draw the firearm, and get my shots on. If I was, waves away, like, sure, I have all the time in the world, I can draw and do what I need to do, but we don't have that privilege when we're in the 0 to 5 foot range. So we have to establish what we call a battering ram. Now, there's two ways that I can do this. Combing my hair method, right? I'm gonna comb my hair and just drive this elbow straight in, right? And again, this is going to act as not only a strike, but it's also going to act as a post to keep them from driving into me. This is one method. The other method is coming straight across to your opposite shoulder. And again, I'm driving the tip of my elbow right into their face, into their chest, whatever I can get to, again, keep them at bay long enough that I can safely draw my weapon and it still apply some damage, right? I'm not casually dropping this arm. I'm driving this arm into them as quickly as I possibly can and aggressively, right? Trying to do some damage in the process. It doesn't matter which method I use, but that is the idea of the battering ram. Now, you also may resort to, again, depending on the weather, the scenario, this could be an overhook. This could be an underhook. This could be grabbing the top of a hood and stuffing their face. This could be grabbing their collar and stuffing them away, right? If we're in a situation where we're wearing a lot of clothing, or again, like it's cold out, right? If we got winter jackets on and hoodies, I may be grabbing garments and kind of stuffing and keeping them at bay. Again, all I'm trying to do is hold them off long enough that I can use my secondary arm to draw my firearm and start getting my shots on point. So understand that this arm is going to be doing something. And as I mentioned in the video, she goes both hands on when they're in this closer range. Fortunately, she made it work, but it was a very high risk for that type of scenario, especially being that close. So this is how the thumb pectoral works, right? Once you draw and get your grip onto the firearm, if I'm going for like the speed rock method, which is the first method that I learned, I get a full grip, thumb and everything wrapped around, and I'm quickly just gonna pull the firearm out, keep it right by my ribs, and I'm gonna fire off a few shots, right? Typically, these shots are gonna land center mass right in the center of the chest, right in the center of the abdomen. The problem with this method, after kind of repping this out in training with sim rounds, is that there was moments where my other hand was either getting shot by myself or it was in range of getting shot, meaning that because I'm potentially grabbing garments or whatever, like there's a chance my arm's going to be stuffed in the middle, which again is in line of fire with my own handgun, right? When you do the thumb pectoral method, it's the idea that I'm drawing this firearm all the way up to my pec. I'm keeping my thumb flared, which we'll talk about in a second, but this angle means that I'm firing downwards, typically towards the top of the leg, at the bottom of the pelvis. Still a devastating area, a lot of arteries and blood down here that I can still do a lot of damage, but no matter how I'm grabbing the person, there's a very slim chance that my arm is ever going to be in line of fire with my handgun, because I'm not gonna be grabbing way down here, right? I'm gonna be occupying something up top. So there's really no chance of a misfire of shooting myself, right? Now, the thumb pectoral method is the idea that I'm keeping my thumb flared. So when I actually go to draw this firearm, I'm keeping my thumb out so that as I pull it up, I'm using that thumb to track the gun all the way up until I get to the pec. And you can see that I still have the thumb flared out. What this allows me to do is, one, keep track of where it is. I know the angle that it's going to be at, but more importantly, because I'm using the thumb here, it's keeping the slide away from my body. If I do a full grip, right, then there's a chance that this gun's going to be turned in or somehow is going to be entangled within my garment. And once I start firing, the slide's going to get caught. Not something that we want to happen in a live situation. So I want that thumb flared out. I'm gonna draw the firearm all the way up until I feel it all the way up at my pec. I should feel a strain in my upper back, right? This is as if I'm doing a high row. I'm gonna get up here and I'm gonna start firing my shots. Again, right down to the pelvic area. This is a great way, again, especially if I'm in this battering ram position, I can fire off a few shots, and then from here, I can immediately start kind of making some distance. Now, here's kind of like a step-by-step method that you can use. Again, it doesn't have to be exactly like this, but if you have an opportunity to practice on a range, or again, if you take one of the ShivWorks classes, they'll definitely put you through this. But the way that they have it is kind of like a 5-step series, right? So the first process, and this isn't even technically like a step, this is the start point, is I'm coming in with a battering ram of some point. Secondary hand, clearing the garment. And again, clear that garment all the way out of the way. Sometimes I like to pull it back a little bit. I'm gonna get my hands on the gun, keep that thumb flared out, and I'm drawing all the whip until I get to that pectoral index position right here, right? I'm gonna fire off my first shot right towards the pelvic area. Now, I'm gonna take one step back and fire again. Again, I should still be in somewhat of the same proximity area, so I'm firing essentially 2 shots off in that same spot, right? Now from here, we're gonna go to what's 3 o'clock. Now notice also that the moment I took a step back and I'm no longer using a battering ram or I'm no longer holding on to any garments, that hand comes immediately to my chest. Keeps it out of the way, fires off the second shot. Now we're gonna meet at what we call the 3 position, where my hands are gonna meet in the center. I'm not bringing my hands out here because again, I don't want any chance of a misfire of shooting my own hand because again, adrenaline, right? So my hand's gonna go from my chest, the gun's gonna go from my pectoral, and we're gonna meet in the center. Now when I take that step back, I should be able to look straight ahead and using my peripherals only, I should be able to see the top of my slide. Again, I don't need to be on site to shoot and get a shot this close. I should just be able to pull the trigger and again, get somewhere in the center of my attacker. Now, as I continue to take steps back, I start to bring the gun up a little bit more, and then eventually I'm able to get all the way back where I'm fully sights on target. I can fire however many shots I need to, but by that point, I've already started to create a lot of space. Again, the first couple shots are simply to get them off of you and give you the opportunity to back off to where then I can get a good sight on my target and actually hit devastating shots or lethal shots if that's what the situation calls for. So again, we're in this position, whether my hands are up and we were kind of just in a verbal argument and I'm gonna go right away into this battering ram position, or if this person's suddenly being aggressive, again, I'm going into the battering ram, I'm clearing the garment, getting my hands on the firearm, keeping that thumb flared out until I get all the way up to my pec, fire off the first shot, hand comes from the chest, I take a step back, fire off the second shot, meet my hands in the middle, fire off the third shot, continue to move back, and now from here, I'm fully sights on and I can do what I need to do from there. Now, the moment, again, if I'm practicing this on a range or something, yes, I'm just gonna kind of be moving backwards. In a real situation, once I get past the 3 o'clock, I should start kind of moving somewhat on an angle to, again, start scanning the area and give myself a little bit more space to, again, where that person kind of has to track me down. But that is the beauty, in my opinion, of the thumb pectoral index. That's what I think she should have done in that situation, or how she should have properly drawn. But the biggest issue that I had with her in that situation was the fact that she was this close to someone and she went hands-on with both hands. Now, the other option that you have is maybe I throw like a jab cross, maybe I just throw a jab, maybe I smack the person. I do some sort of damage to kind of keep them off me a little bit. And then once I've kind of thrown a strike, now I can get hands-on, draw the firearm, get my shots off, start creating that space, and I can do what I need to do to land a few more devastating shots. Now, again, that's just my opinion. I think, honestly, if you are training self-defense and you carry a firearm, you need to train that 0 to 5 foot range quite often. You need to practice it. You need to rep out drawing the firearm successfully and know the proper steps so that, again, under stress, your body knows what to do, your mind knows what to do, and you don't have to think twice about it. But the most important thing, again, is I have to do something with this primary hand, right? My secondary hand is going to be going for the firearm. That primary hand, the one that's out front, I need to throw some strikes. I need to get some form of grip control, whatever, to keep this person at bay and apply some damage so that I can safely draw the firearm, create some distance, get my shots on point, and we can get out of there safely.